So I was told to throw a little twist on this for designers. So what do all these modules mean? There's like, I think there's like 60 modules that were used to create that site. So when you go to theme your site, design your site, Garland throws about 7 active style sheets at you when you go to style it. I mean, Garland's probably a bad example to use as a starter theme. Zen, I think, throws 3 of them at you. When we activated all these modules and went into it, we had 28 style sheets. That was just the front page. I don't know, I forget if it had loaded all the CSS when the page loaded, but I know like quick tabs and stuff like that might not be listed on this, and that'll load once you get to the page. So that's the give and take. You can build all this stuff with modules. When you go to style it, you have 28 style sheets to work with. You don't necessarily hit all of them, but do know that they do load and could cause some conflict.
Other places for bugs, huh?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Is everybody familiar with Firebug, Web Developer, Coda for Mac? Did you say yes to Firebug? No. Firebug is an extension. Everybody? Firebug is an extension for Firefox. Really? So, an example of how to identify these style sheets when you're working with them. So this little location right down here. And in Firebug, you can hit inspect and just roll over portions of your website. Anybody familiar with the dev module for Drupal? Kind of does the same thing. There's a module called the it's either dev module or themer module. And it's just an actual module that runs inside your Drupal site and will break all this stuff down for you. But Firebug runs right through the browser, so you just roll right over and you can actually find the CSS and the CSS line that's calling that. So you can kind of work with it, and you can kind of, figure out, how you want to style things. I just blew that right off the map, but it allows you to just live edit that CSS, just so you get an idea of it, and then you can go back and make the changes. So that's typically what we do. We would go through, find the CSS, and then hit it in Coda. That's what we primarily use to theme our sites. And Web Developer will do other things. This is the extension that's loaded in my Firefox up here. And if you wanted to view the CSS for this site, it'll pull them all. These are all the CSS sheets that's loaded. So it'll give you an idea of what to hit, what to look for in the back end.
Some of them are pretty short.
Some of them are, yeah. But I think like the main style sheet, and this one is like 2,000 lines long. Something crazy like that. So another tip for themers is moving the module style sheet into the theme folder. Because with Drupal 6, with the override function, to help things stay a little bit more organized, kind of like we were talking about, core modules folder versus sites all modules folder, is you can just copy the module style sheet into your themes, and it'll just override it, call it. And when you style, instead of just hacking the modules folder, put that style sheet inside your themes folder and edit that instead of editing directly to your modules. Again, it's all sanity stuff. It's just when you go to upgrade, everything's in one nice little neat spot, so you don't accidentally override anything that could possibly break the rest of your site. And that's really it. So I can go back to the real estate site, or if anybody has any other questions about it.
You didn't talk about Coda?
Oh, Coda.
I'm not sure why you would use all
Coda.
three or what.
Coda is just a text editor, and it's just what I use on Mac. It's probably a good answer to your question, why everybody has Mac.
Yeah.
I've only had a Mac since I started using Drupal. Never used one before. And I totally agree. Way overpriced. Insane, the money that you pay for this. But, the software that you can get for it, hands down is just much more well thought out. you know, so I can just go into
Yeah.
this site.
Would Coda, for example, do FTP or?
Yeah, yep, you can just drag and drop right into this GUI right here.
So what is Coda like? Is it's not like text or anything?
It's a little bit more advanced. Well, I shouldn't say that. I really don't use text or anything.
10 FTP? So
Yep.
it's-
Yeah,
is
you
it
can just
like
drag,
Fetch? Or-
similar. You can just kind of drag and drop right into this, right into that bar right there. I use CyberDuck. I still FTP with that. Transfer large amounts of files, but one file at a time, I just drag and drop right into this.
So you had a section on choosing modules?
Yep.
But you didn't even talk about it that much. Is there any like, tips about that?
Really, when you go to choose modules, I guess this is one of the gray areas. You really can't choose a module if you don't know it exists. And that's one of the things about Drupal that I guess really annoy themers, or designers, I should say. When I talk about choosing modules, I say to choose modules, I guess more of when you find it, how you kind of determine it's the right one. And that's usually by looking at the issue queue, looking at when they've been released, is it being actively maintained? Because that, I mean, it all depends on what you're doing too. If you're building personal sites and you want to mess around, I always use development stuff, dev modules. Client site, I always use the release stuff, the stable release stuff. And I wouldn't use on a client site anything that, you know, really hasn't been around or really recommended. So when I'm choosing modules, that's what I look for. I look for how many issues, how many people are solving issues, when it was last updated. But that is a gray area, knowing what to choose, and how you know it even exists. I mean, a typical, I'll use this as an example. This is views, the thing that does the slideshow is views slideshow. So I guess many people could say, well, there's 15,000 different ways to make a slideshow. Why do I want to use a module? Well, with this, you're giving the client the ability to add and remove their photos in the slideshow, you know, whenever they please. And it interfaces with Drupal, obviously. But you don't necessarily need to use it. I mean, you can put in your own code.
Are you able to take somebody's module and modify it?
You could. Yeah, I mean, the modules are all, for the most part, unless they say otherwise, are all GPL open source. To just take it and modify it as you like. You know, and it's up to your discretion whether or not you want to give back.
Yeah, and if two modules, say, conflict, is that noted anywhere?
It's not really. It's only if, really, you're only going to get that level of communication if it's major modules. If there's no module, if, you know, using some rarely used module and it conflicts with, let's say, views, you know, you post it in the views issue queue and, you know, you tell them that it doesn't work. And depending on the size of that module that you used, if there's only one person who develops it and he's forgotten about it, then it's up to you to fix it. But that is the hardest thing. You're absolutely right. It's knowing which modules to pick and why.
So do you have any system for like that you know, bring in a new module for testing it at all?
Mm-hmm.
Before you bring in another one?
Not really. I mean, what we typically do is we have a list of modules that we know we always use. CCK, views, admin, menu, web form, CAPTCHA. There's, you know, a slew of core modules that we use. And really, we've never met a solution we haven't been able to fit in a normal client's website. And by normal, I mean, you know, contact forms, image gallery, even maps, locations, slideshows. There hasn't been anything over the top yet that the modules that are out there haven't solved. Typically with that, we've gone to outside PHP developers and sourced it that way for stuff that we haven't really figured out.
Is there like a YouTube playback or video playback module? Probably is, I would think.
Yeah, there's in this
Several, probably.
in this one. I don't know if I have it. I think it's an $800,000 house. So we have a field for video walkthrough, and all this is the embedded media module for CCK.
Okay.
And all you have to do with this one is it interfaces with blip.tv.
Oh, okay.
So we like this for our clients because all they have to do is browse to the actual URL of Blip, copy and paste it in there, and then it'll parse it and spit it into the theme like you just saw. That way they don't even have to, they've got that little embed HTML that you can copy and paste, but you don't even need to do that. So you just tell them it's as simple as copying the URL, pasting it in there, and doing that. On the same hand, it's the same thing. We would start out with just having a little text field and tell people, yep, just paste it in. And then people would we'd have our sales guys try to figure it out, subject clients try to figure it out. They're like, this isn't working. Then we'll go back, look for a module that works, plug it in, go back and test it. Go up to people and say, does this work, does that work? And that's where beauty tips came in. Because our sales guys were like, well, I want instructions under every field. So, then you go back and you say, well, what can do this? And it's just, at this point in this stage of the game with Drupal, it's just, testing it out, going back to the drawing board, testing it out, going back to the drawing board.
So is beauty tips a module?
Beauty tips is a module. Yep, it's actually Jeff, that guy who did the keynote.
Yeah.
He made it.
Do you know if there's something that can enable like drag and drop
Through
the UI?
drag and drop for anything?
Like
Or,
a document from one folder to another?
there's nothing I know of off the top of my head. There's IMCE is I think I use that here. IMCE is a file manager. I don't use that on the site. And it's a file manager per user. So every user has their own little file directory if you assign it to them. They can drag and drop files within the directories. But if you want something like, I think WordPress does that, where you can actually drag it into the WYSIWYG, there's nothing I know that does that with Drupal.
So IMCE?
IMCE. Yes. Should be. That's a screenshot of what it looks like. So they get a little, how many people have worked with images or struggled with images in Drupal? It's the same thing. There's no right way to do it yet, if that makes any sense. Even with the WYSIWYG stuff, there's a WYSIWYG API module that I guess is flowing into Drupal 7 as the core API for WYSIWYG. And now you can attach FCK, TinyMCE, all the popular WYSIWYG modules all into one API. And then use those WYSIWYGs on different content types. So there's tons of stuff. It's just that back and forth.
So you use this WYSIWYG API instead of FCK?
I do, yeah, we do, because it allows us, there's a lot of things, and I guess it's one of those things you have to just experience. Some things that FCK will break and just not work correctly, but TinyMCE works fine. So, and it depends usually on the content types. So with WYSIWYG API, you can actually just say, okay, when I make a, house listing page, use FCK editor. When I make a rentals page, use TinyMCE for the WYSIWYG for that content type. Or when I use blog, use Yahoo WYSIWYG, or YUIA, whatever it's called. So you can just break it down to different content types. And even views. Everybody familiar with views? Getting into views? I know you've used views a little bit. I mean, you can use views for anything. That's one of the most powerful things, because you can just build all kinds of lists of data. So most of this site is pure views. So you sell a site like this to a client, and you have an admin for that client, and you can just create a user list of all the users signed into the system. or assigned to the system. And you say, well, yeah, I mean, Drupal has that in their core admin, but then you're stuck teaching the client how to navigate admin, and you're struggling yourself how to learn how to use the back end of Drupal. So with views, once you understand it, once you grasp that, then you can start building pages of views, you know, to serve your client's needs or to even help you organize yourself. Core stats module, you can do something like this where you can see, you know, which listing gets viewed the most. You know, just building, you know, quirky little admin pages like that that Drupal doesn't have, but with views you're able to build those types of things. The site has I don't have anything listed here, but booking, same thing, the calendar module. Building views for that.
So once you get a module, how do you add it to your site?
Alright, let's say I want to install views. Now I just run the stuff locally. So typically what I'll do is I'll just get right into my site's all modules folder. Do you develop locally or do you just FTP stuff right up?
Well,
Yeah. Expand it. Drop right in. Go into, are you familiar with admin menu? I recommend it. Definitely recommend it. Yeah, it's going to take, you know, it's going to take, there should be a, well, like the using Drupal book by Lullabot. What they do, and they do it very intelligently, is they break down the use cases. So here's a bunch of modules, here's how I'm going to use it in every chapter, and how, you know, how they all interact with each other. That's what Drupal, that's what the community needs. So you can figure out which modules to use, because nobody's telling you how they're all working together. So admin module, install it on every single site, because it's going to give you your navigation right up here. Instead of, you know, diving into the depths. So you get into your, go into your modules area. This theme is not really a good theme to display. So now here it is, there's views. It wasn't there before, now it's there, and it's not activated. You can see if it's requiring some kind of other module to install, and this semi-answers one of your questions is, you know, if a module requires another module to be installed, it'll list it here and say, you know, missing. This one says, you know, it's required by, this module requires views, it's just not enabled right now. So you just go and check them off. Save your configuration. Pray that it doesn't break. You know, this theme is a little strange, but it'll tell you it's been saved. Had I shown you this admin menu before, you would not have seen the views module installed. But now it's there. Some modules require a lot of configuration depending on what it is. I did a screencast on the Twitter module and the Facebook module. Those will instantly tell you that you need to configure it. You need to put your account information in there. Views is passive, so you can go and create a view whenever you want. You know, if it's, you know, if they're, I think like the e-commerce Uber cart, you might have to go and set up all the currency information right off the bat before you can continue. Stuff like that. But that's really, especially if you're developing locally, downloading it, putting it in, and just going through and activating it.
What about going over renewal of updating the module?
Updating the module?
Do you have to disable it and then read it, and then can you just copy it right on top of the other?
The same, I mean,
I've seen specific things you're supposed to do, so.
yeah, it depends on, I guess it really depends on what the maintainer is gonna say. You know,
What's the
some
best practices?
yeah, some maintainers are gonna tell you, for instance, the date module was working that the other day and something wasn't working. And again, you go right back to the project page. It's like checking the logs on your computer or on your server. Just check the project page. And this particular maintainer already knows that there's issues. So spelled out right on the front page of the modules page is troubleshooting. So they're already telling you, you know, if you're having an issue, update to the very latest dev version of this module. Not many modules are going to come out and say that, but this particular maintainer does. So the point is, you know, the module will tell you, or the developer should tell you how the process works. How do I do it? Copy right over it. Copy right over it, and then the most important thing is update PHP. And this will run through and update the database tables and stuff like that. So if, I'm probably not going to have anything that changed, because I didn't update anything, but if I had updated views, it would have notified me that I was updating, you know, and whatever changes it would have made to the database, it would have said it right there. Yeah, I mean, they say that you should put your site in, yeah, in offline mode. If you're having,
It doesn't matter if you have the modules, do you disable modules?
I never disable modules, no. No. I mean, if I run into an issue, if you run into an issue, then typically you'll know right off the bat if something messed up, because there are some annoyances where you go to update and it corrupts a table in the database. So that will always, it'll be constantly reminding you of the big error, you know, displayed prominently. So everywhere you go, it'll say, you know, missing this, missing that. That's when I might disable the module, refresh, you know, re-enable it, and then update it again.
So what does the Facebook and Twitter module do?
Facebook and Twitter. Took it off my site.
Why?
I did. The Facebook module, I'll answer your question first. The Facebook module loads, you can sign into your website with your Facebook username and password. And anybody, if you set it up that way, can sign into your site, create an account with their Facebook username and password. Then they can pull in their friends list and, you know, displays right in your site. And then they could recommend your site to other people and that type of thing. I ended up taking it out because it was just, it always loads and hits their servers. So I was I'd be going to log into my site, and I just log in now, and wait, and it's communication. And I'm like, well, it's fast enough for me to just freaking type my name and password in, and I can just be right in. So I ended up taking that out. Twitter module allows you to capture module right here. Everybody's familiar with capture?
Yeah. Yep.
I made this image so hard once I could never log into my site. Because you can control the degree of difficulty.
Oh.
So if I were to create a blog entry with the Twitter module installed, it's actually going to post it, and you put your credentials in for your Twitter account, but it'll integrate right into any content type that you have, and it'll automatically post that link, tiny URL, put it in your Twitter, and then put this little you know, whatever title you want, you can configure that too. So it'll spit that right into your Twitter feed. It also pull in, you know, it makes a view block to pull in your latest updates. I didn't use that, I just used the regular HTML that was Twitter. But you can do that too. It's just the view page that I made for the few screencasts that I've made so far. 5-star, if you want to rate different content types.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool too, because then once you get, and this is, again, it goes back, modules, working with modules, and you have 5-star different content types, and then people can, once people vote on it, views, it'll you know, weight whichever one's got the highest votes, you know, stuff like that. I used that same blip integration for the site. Service links for, you know, sharing to the other websites.
Oh, that code down there at the bottom, the sharing code, that's part of the module?
Yep, that's service links.
Okay.
Is that the name of the module?
Yep.
Service links?
Yep.
Services.
Ignore that security update. But with service links, you know, you can tell which content types you want it to show up on. Like obviously I don't want it on my web form, so I take that out. Which categories you can break it down. Which services to actually share it with.
Well, remember WordPress now. Oh, well, no big deal.
Yeah. Just keep
Can't
that.
have everything.
Yeah.
Okay, what about RSS, enabling RSS? Can you make RSS on pages that might update? Is that built into the Drupal?
For the blog module.
Just for the blog?
But views, if you go into views, ignore that massive error at the top too. So I have a feed. This is set up for a feed right there. So with views, you can actually create feed views to send out an RSS feed. So in this case, I have a separate feed just for the screencasts. I had that separate feed just for the blog. You know, if people want to subscribe to either one. And now then you just set the path. You know, integrates with FeedBurner. Put your FeedBurner link in there too.
How much documentation do you do for developing a new website beforehand? Because I talked to some people and they say, well, they come to us with a, you know, napkin and
Yeah.
we start talking and
Yeah.
one thing leads to another and after, you know, 90 days we have a website or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing this all by myself.
Right.
But I need to know where I am in this process and I'm tired of having it all in my head.
Yeah, one thing I say about Drupal is it's like an operating system. I mean, you have to remember the stuff that you've installed. You know, it's like, you know, when in Windows you install 15,000 things and you forget about them. Next thing you know, your computer's slowing down. You go back and you remove them all, and you know, oh, I feel great now. But I guess I could hold a session on deciding on whether or not you should document for a client or not. If you want to document for yourself, yes. Client side, I always ask the question, paying me for it. So yes, I could, you know, 40 hours of development, 40 hours of design, 40 hours of documentation. You know, do you want 40 hours of documentation? Yes, I do. Okay, here it is. You know, it's one of the things a company that I acquired, company I work for acquired, they had built a CMS system from scratch. One developer, he was in a car accident, he was bedridden for 8 months, and he built this entire CMS. We bought the company, he left, we had nothing, right? And we had about 150 sites that were running this. And this was code. This is like Perl scripts, text database, flat file text database, right? Database. So nobody knew how to fix it. Nobody knew what to do with it. You know, and then so we tell these customers, with the few developers that stayed with us, we're going to port over to Drupal. Here's how we're going to do that. So we talk about documentation, and in this case, the clients were already well aware what they've lost by not having documentation, because the company that they entrusted purchased by us. So they had said, well, what if this company just evaporated? Then I wouldn't have been able to take my site to anybody and say, help me, here's my site. So we tried selling, you know, not documentation services, but, you know, documenting the flow along with it. Not many people bid, because it's hours. I mean, it's hours of time documenting it. Right? There's no way around it. That's the, you know, you sit there and type screenshot as you go along. I totally recommend it, especially with a large Drupal site, so you can remember.
How do you do? I mean, what do you do? Where does it all
How does it all end?
Project management, I guess I have to talk to my friends who do that.
Yeah.
Particularly, but I'm just, I don't know, I just like.
It's definitely helpful, because with Drupal you want to keep everything upgraded. You want to keep updating security releases, patches. So what will happen is, if you're doing it for clients and they don't want to upgrade it, they don't want to pay for upgrade services. Well, how do you tell them that if you come back to me in 2 years and they say, I want to add, you know, e-commerce, or something broke on my site? Well, I told you to purchase upgrading services 2 years ago, so you didn't. You buy a car, not give it an oil change for 2 years. You know, you not do anything with it. You just let it sit there and just beat it and drive back and forth to Boston 3 hours a day. You know, and expect it to run fine in 2 years. No. So you should also try to maintain your site. You know. So I guess that, you know, when you're trying to document, you probably want to do a little documentation for yourself, so you can remember if the client doesn't pay for this, and the client doesn't want to pay for documentation, at least I know which modules I have installed, and I'll know what I'm going to be up against. It also falls back to best practices, moving things into your themes folder, not hacking core, not hacking modules, you know, keeping everything together so that if you do need to go back and upgrade from a year ago, you don't break anything. It's never a guarantee, because you never know what happens in the middle. Any other questions about modules?
You didn't mention, because I don't know much about Drupal, you didn't mention MySQL.
Yep.
Is MySQL considered a module, or is this implied?
No, that's just
it's
a database.
inside of
The database runs separate.
Okay.
Yeah, just runs separate from Drupal.
So all these modules just keep updating tables in MySQL on their own. You don't have to really think about them that much.
See, like this big broken error right up here on my site? That's a MySQL error.
Okay. Oh, select. I see what you mean. From views, yeah.
Yeah, it's all broken. I just haven't had time to fix it. And it's not a really.
It looks nasty. But
It looks nasty, but it's not that bad.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. How far have you gone with Drupal?
With Drupal, I installed and have been running OS Commerce for like 6 months now.
Yeah.
No bugs, nothing broken, but I did it through GoDaddy's
Yeah.
host panel.
Yeah.
I just click install.
Yeah.
And all my time so far has been spent on just the content, the
Yeah.
screens and what to say in the screens. And,
Yeah.
But I had to go inside of, individual PHP pages.
Yeah.
The hard code text.
And
And that was scary, because
Yeah.
you can get it wrong real easy, blow something away, and I had to overwrite, some of those
Yeah.
modified pages with the original stuff.
Yeah.
Because I, had to learn it the hard way, so that's
Yeah.
what I was. But now like, I never had to touch MySQL, I never had to do anything to it.
Yeah.
It just worked.
Yeah.
So that's the only Drupal thing I've done so far.
I think that's everybody's issue with Drupal, is they never had to touch PHP or MySQL before, so they never really worried about it.
Okay.
Until now, until they started using Drupal. But it's like Jeff said in the keynote, it's just a tool set, really. It's not going to be the 100%. You can do everything once you get it all together, but it's not the 100% complete solution.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
It's about what I've heard about, I don't know much about it either, what's it called? it'll come to me. I'll skip for now. But it's a framework. It's a framework. Ruby on Rails.
Oh, Ruby on
Is
Rails?
Ruby on Rails related to Drupal at all?
No.
It has nothing to do with it. So a Ruby on Rails user would not touch Drupal. I mean, a web project done on Ruby on Rails, for example.
I mean, I'm sure there's ways to integrate things, but
Okay.
it's basically, you have Drupal that's on PHP,
Okay.
and Ruby on Rails is Ruby,
Oh.
and the framework, I believe, is Rails. Don't quote me on that, not 100%.
That's true.
But I think that's the way it is.
Framework is Rails.
Yep.
Okay. I see.
So it's two different,
It's two totally different. It's like
Yeah.
Windows and Mac OS.
Right. Yeah. I'm
Ah.
sure it's
Not-
ways to integrate.
Not quite that bad.
Yeah, not-
You could link them
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You could, one could link the other, but only at a web services level, not at a
Right.
framework level.
Nice.
They're two separate worlds.
Mhm.
So the more modules you install, the slower the site will run?
Theoretically, I guess. I mean, the more, the more you're gonna put in there, the slower it's gonna be. I mean, there are a lot of ways to go through that better qualified people should talk about than I. But there are a lot of things that you can go and make performance tweaks. I mean, just in core alone,
But you've never run into a problem of installing too many modules?
I've never, no, not even this site, and the real estate site, 60 some odd modules. But in core Drupal, and I actually noticed, when I had the Facebook Connect module, I had a bunch of other modules running on my front page. There are performance tweaks right inside core Drupal that you can go and activate. Caching, compression, stuff like that. And it'll break it down and explain to you, how it's going to do it. And I use this little Firefox extension called Slow, and that, times the amount of load a site takes. So I've never done a site that I've needed to really narrow it down and make it a really tight performer. But theoretically, yes, the more you add, the more load. Especially like CSS, like 20-second style sheets.
What was that extension you're using?
This one for Firefox, this is Firefox, it's Slow.
Wiselow?
YSLOW.
Oh, Wiselow.
Yeah. My site gets a C. It used to get an F, actually. A lot of Drupal sites get Fs.
Yeah.
As I got into this, I found out that I needed the shell access, and GoDaddy doesn't have it, I don't think.
That's
Yeah.
right. No,
So,
I don't think so.
do you use shell access a good bit when you're manipulating their sites, or?
I do. It's only because I use it a lot for my day job, but you don't necessarily have to. Like, what do you use it for? That you
I
found?
guess to do some kind of,
Changing permissions?
well, no, the first thing was redirecting, was the URL or something, so I had to do with, I can't remember the terms.
Like,
I know you have, I'm blank, I can't remember.
I mean, if you're using command line to edit a file, you can edit it locally and upload it. If you need to change permissions on a folder, you can do that through your FTP client.
Yeah, I can do a
Yep.
lot of that. I guess part of it too, I can move around big files easily.
Yeah, you can do that too.
I guess you fetch. or something like that.
It's easier for you to do that.
It was some kind of virtual URL. What's it called? I'll go back and look at it tonight.
Yeah.
The subversion.
Yeah. We talked about that in that meetup. That was probably not a good idea to get into that. I was afraid for you when she was telling you about it. Yeah, there's no, don't use it. I mean, don't use it if you're,
Somebody told me about Beanstalk.
yeah, you know what I do?
When I was eating deep.
I download it. and I saved a copy. She was getting it, we were at a meetup in Providence, and I'm closer to Providence than I am to Boston. And we were together in this meetup, and the previous girl that was here was talking about Subversion. Anybody familiar with Subversion? I mean, it's
Version control.
version control.
I mean, you can see that version control is a problem in these.
Right,
websites.
right.
Anything.
I mean, it's great when you're working in a team environment.
Mhm.
She was having you use it for you working on it by
Yeah,
yourself.
I'm trying to figure out how to maintain my website.
Yeah, it's not gonna, I mean,
The trick was to do that, I think that if I think the thing out right and understand which tables are being changed
yeah,
by the Drupal modules, and which might be being changed by saying adding users to the
Right.
website while
Right.
I'm changing the tables in the
Right.
development site. If you figure that out,
yeah,
then you won't lose the stuff that's already been.
right. I mean, if you wanna get that granular, yeah, but
What I've been doing is just developing the one
Yeah.
site.
it's backing it up, right, just downloading it, putting it in a
Yeah.
folder, you know, June 12th, save that over there.
Yeah, maybe so,
Yeah,
maybe
make
just
another
have another working copy that I can make work on another URL.
Yeah, or just develop it locally too.
Yeah, that is still have to figure out.
It's much easier than SVN,
Yeah.
much easier.
Have you had any experience with, I think like social networking modules that you're working with?
Well, you got the two, like the Twitter and the Facebook. Depending, you know, that's one layer of, I guess, social networking, getting people to log in with their Facebook and accessing their Twitter stuff, or posting their Twitter stuff. But I guess it all depends on, you know, what you're looking to. Get back to the real estate thing.
That they exist?
They don't exist per se. Like you could download one module and it would do everything for you. Making user profiles right now, like if you're trying to make like a Facebook or a MySpace, that really doesn't exist without putting a bunch of those pieces of the puzzle together again. You know, image sharing, you could probably manipulate with image galleries and stuff like that. But there's no one,
Or chat?
like a live chat.
Yeah.
That one I don't know. There's a release of, or either a module or a release of Drupal. It's called Drig, I believe. D-R-I-G-G. That might be a dig clone. Anyway, there's there are modules that you can all piece together to make a community site. Drupal with core, users, permissions, stuff like that. Views, giving people access to some pages and other people access to others. But there's no one dead-on community module. Any other questions? Comments?
Security.
I gotta go, man. I gotta go.
Yeah,
No, I'm just kidding. Security, again, the best place to look is your status report, and right now, actually not, oh, this one might tell me. This is a local site. This is version 6.9, the last time I had updated that. So your status page right here is right off the bat going to tell you it's not secure. You're just going to just hit to see what the latest version's out there. Yeah, this status page will tell you, when it's known that there's a security issue. You know, and that all depends on the module. I mean, that depends on whether or not the module has already released that information. You know, and the other thing is to stay active, I guess. Bulletin boards, mailing list, IRC, you know, keeping in the loop with all that stuff. I get all my information from, I just subscribe to a bunch of feeds. Every day, 150 new, I just go through them all, and that's how I get all the most current information for me. And groups, local groups, meetups.
There's also a Drupal security mailing list too.
Yep.
That you can sign up for at drupal.org/security, and they send out email updates when vulnerabilities are found, so you can update your modules that way too.
Okay.
Is there one place on the Drupal site where you have all of these mailing lists?
There is.
2 minutes.
It might even be Drupal.org/mailing list, mailing hyphen list. Or you can just do a Google search for it. I think it's plural.